All right, we're live. I'm Coach Tony. I'm here with behavioral coach George Halachev, who is one of the, no, not one of the most successful wake up early, become an early riser coaches on the Coach.me platform. Um, we're doing something new here, office hours with coaches. So it's a chance for potential clients to get to know you and and then I'm going to moderate for people listening. I'm going to moderate questions from the YouTube live chat, and then I also have some questions myself. And well, first of all, I want to say good morning, George, but it's not morning for you, I don't think.
Yeah, it's late in the afternoon, but thanks
Right.
for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So first, let me say one more thing about George. When I say, one of my favorite or one of the best coaches on the platform, I'm always judging that based on track record. It's one of the great things about having a bunch of coaches on one platform is you can see are clients happy or not? Are they succeeding or not? George has coached, I think, now over 800 people to pick up to become early risers, and has one of the highest track, strongest track records we've ever seen on the platform. So that's what I mean by he's a good coach, and I'm really happy to have him. But George, I have a opening question for you, which is just how and why did you get into coaching?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Initially, I was on the Lyft platform, which many people, being coached.me customers know. It was just a habit tracker in the beginning, and I used it. And one day I just saw that you rebranded, right? You shifted the focus of the company, and I thought you were offering coaching, and I never thought of myself like a coach. And my first thought was, can I do this? Like, I don't have any certification in this. I felt like I wasn't ready for this, but I wanted to do it right. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. I've been reading, self-help books, and I've been working on my personal development for 10 years. Surely there is something that I can help people with, right? And sure enough, I started, and after a few days, my first client, signed up. That went very well, and um, it's been going great since then.
Um, we it that's I mean that's exactly the history of the Coach.me company, is that we thought um, the theory that we had was that someone who is successful personally would have something to offer as an accountability coach. And then, I mean, now I believe you are certified through us, because we, based on how the other coaches, um, based on what we saw in our platform, we put together a behavioral coaching certification. Um,
Now I am.
uh,
Back then I
yeah,
was.
I
Yeah,
know, right? But we were a little bit riskier at the beginning.
right.
Um, so I'm I'm just pulling up. Uh, um, a question I had, and I know we talked about this offline a little bit.
Mhm.
You had this idea that there's basically three types of people that hire you for coaching. What can you explain those groupings?
You mean their goals or
Yeah, well, I think that you had said the people that want to wake up work early tend to come in a couple different categories.
right, right. Well, they're yeah, basically three. Either they're in some kind of trouble, like for example, they're always late for work and they're about to get fired, and they cannot get themselves out of bed to be on time. Or they're people very motivated to change something positive about their life, but they don't have the time to. For example, they want to exercise or they want to eat a healthy breakfast. And the only option for them is to wake up earlier than everybody else so they can do their favorite habit. Or there are people that are very interested in their business, but also they're very busy and people are emailing them all the time and they have to work with their coworkers. And the only creative time they have is before everybody wakes up. So these are basically the three types of people that are most common.
Um, so when someone comes to you for for coaching, what are the ways that they normally end up needing help or getting help through coaching?
Well, the main thing is accountability, since that's the platform. Uh, but there really isn't one specific issue. Some people need more guidance, more technique. Other people want to get into the behavior and how to change, how to make that transition, how to change their belief. Uh, they want to know how to, they want to have the belief that they can do it in the first place because, they cannot believe that this can be done for them. They've been struggling for so long. And having a coach who has been through this and has managed to solve it helps a lot.
Right. Uh, I'm checking with the people in the chat to see if
Sure.
we have any volunteers to come on
Any braves?
online with us. Any brave souls. We'll see if we'll get a yes to that. Does so do I guess I'm wondering, someone had asked in the sign up, they'd asked about morning routines. How much of becoming an early riser is about discipline in the morning?
I'd say very little is about discipline.
Really?
And that's probably the most common mistake I see, that people think it's all about motivating yourself and pushing harder and having more willpower. Uh,
Right.
but the bigger part of the habit, I'd say, is the part before that. What do you do to prepare? First of all, what kind of a goal do you set? Is it realistic even? And then what do you do um, before you even have to wake up to make it easy for yourself?
Right.
That's big.
So what is your preparation look like?
For a new habit,
No,
you mean?
for waking up early. What were the things that you did?
Oh, when I was first doing this,
Yeah.
well, I went through a lot of trial and failure and a lot of things that didn't work.
Yeah.
But the thing that did work was actually a very interesting metaphor of chess, how people play chess. And usually the newbies that start playing chess usually go for the win right away. They go for the kill. They want to take, checkmate. And that usually fails. And people that are more experienced know that there are stages of the game. There's an early game, there's a mid game, end game. And the first stages, they don't try to go for the kill. They don't try to build a habit right away. They don't try to set their alarm clock for 5 a.m. They set the board, set themselves up for later victory. So in the first stage, in the early game, you would do things like um, set your goal so that it's realistic. Create a strategy for the goal, not even thinking about setting your alarm yet. Spend a few days thinking about your goal, setting a strategy. Things like, am I going to get enough sleep if I set this early time? What happens if, am I going to do it on weekends too? What happens if I get invited late to, to a party? Do I go to the party or not? Setting those when then conditions. What happens if this? And a lot of people fail to do the habit because they don't have a plan beforehand for those conditions. So that would be the early game of the whole process. Then when you get into the mid game, still you don't try to wake up or do whatever goal you're doing. You try to set yourself up for success. Set some conditions in place that will later on make it easy for yourself. And that is things like getting a good alarm clock that you're sure is going to work every day and you're not going to miss it. Setting some kind of a condition in the morning so that it's easy to get out of bed. For example, laying out your clothes so that you jump out of bed and you're ready. Preparing your breakfast even on the last day, on the day before. So it's all about setting yourself up for success later on. And after you do all that, then you get into the waking up, and then you need a little bit of willpower. But that willpower is much easier to do, that discipline, when you've done all the work beforehand.
Uh, I get it. That uh, it's like the gutted out part, the willpower part. You put that at the end,
Exactly.
and people are always trying to put that at the beginning. I've actually never heard a coach describe it quite like that. That's a really interesting observation.
Right.
Wow. The um, to to reinforce some of the other parts, though, it's like there's like a lot of good coachy exercises in there. The when then list, like a really common. A lot of the coaches on the platform will give an exercise like that. It's about pre-decisions. Um, the environmental design. Sometimes it's not rocket science, right? It's um,
Exactly.
the an alarm that works. I'm taking that means that you've had clients that had alarms that didn't work, and well, obviously that's something that you're going to need to change.
Right.
Um, I I had a question written down here about which I think you've covered a little bit, but what are some of the common patterns that you've seen with people that had been preventing them from succeeding? So the broken alarm clock. What were the some of the other ones that really are common with people who are wanting this goal and aren't able to do it on their own?
Going to a specific example, it will be um, setting their alarm clock next to their bed, taking the alarm clock example. And that is so easy to snooze or just turn off and keep sleeping. Some people don't even remember turning it off because they're, in a stupor in the morning. They're feeling groggy and they just turn it off and forget afterwards. So the first thing will be to set it uh, away from the bed, ideally, on the other side of the room. So you have to get up in order to be able to turn it off. Something else is also making sure you're getting enough sleep, because the reason people want to wake up early usually is to be more productive. And if you're not getting enough sleep, it doesn't really matter if you wake up early, you're still going to be sleepy and you're still not going to get anything done. So make sure if you're setting like 5 p.m., 5 a.m. Wake up time, you have enough realistic time for your sleep. That means if you usually end up working until midnight, that's not realistic. You're only getting 5 hours of sleep. So that's not a wake up time for you. Make
Right.
sure you're getting at least 8 hours. Otherwise, you're just defeating the whole purpose. You're not going to be productive anyway.
But so, there's a mythology though around people that don't sleep 8 hours, that sleep 4 or 5 hours. What is your take on that?
I know about it very well since about half the people say, "Oh, I can do it with less hours." And to tell you the truth, out of the 800 people that I've worked with so far, none of them have made it under 7 hours of sleep. None of them have been able to do it consistently and become really early risers long term if they didn't get at least seven. Like that's the bare minimum. And most people report that because I push pretty hard on this, try it. Just try to get 8 or 9 hours. Most people say if I get those extra hours, I feel more productive during the day. Like I feel more alert, I get more things done.
The uh, I was at a talk by the Berkeley sleep researcher Matthew Shepard, I think his name is,
Mhm.
and he he had given one of the reasons that people think they can get by with lack of sleep is that research says that when you have not gotten enough sleep, uh, you're drunk, and so this sort of this belief that you're fine is like the exact equivalent to uh, this Todd, we're going to get to in a second. Thank you for being brave. This belief that you're fine with the lack of sleep is the exact parallel to a drunk believing that they're fine, even though they're clearly impaired. Um, I
The
just go ahead.
the weird thing is that we can be very sleep deprived, and just because we've always been that way for the past few years, we don't even realize it, right? It's like fish being in water, and you ask the fish what is water, and what are you talking about? They don't perceive the water just because they're immersed in it. And that happens, exactly the same thing happens with sleep. When you're sleep deprived, you don't even know that you're sleep deprived because you always feel that way.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, as someone who's like sort of, I swim in the Silicon Valley world where there's a lot of hero worshiping.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people are lying. That it's like it's part of their personal branding to say that they're somehow superhuman,
Yeah.
and I think it's not true. But, so I mean, I think sometimes these stories you have to take with a grain of salt. Is even sort of famously, Thomas Edison didn't sleep that much at night, but then you dig into it, and it turns out he took a ton of naps.
Yeah.
Famous for napping, and so yeah, I mean, you're the expert here, and you're saying 800 people that you've talked to, uh, they all need a full night's sleep.
Yeah. I've tried
Uh,
it myself too.
yeah,
Being the expert on this, I've experimented a lot, as you can imagine, and I can do it. Like I can do it with 5 hours of sleep, but usually I get much less done,
yeah,
and those 3 hours that I get extra of awake time are wasted anyway. So
right,
it's not worth it.
right. Let's bring our brave volunteer, Todd, who I muted, but I might unmute now, or maybe he muted himself. Uh, Todd, you're muted? You muted? Did Can you unmute yourself? Are you able to unmute yourself? Hmm.
We can't hear you.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
How's that?
Yes, there you go, Todd. Welcome.
Okay.
This is this is an first time we've done office hours with the coach, and so you're like literally the first volunteer we've ever had. So thank you.
You're doing great.
If you don't mind, I wanted to set up a situation where our coach of honor today could ask you a few questions, and we could hear a little bit about your desire to wake up early. George, you want to take over?
Sure. Well, Todd, can you just tell us why you're here and why did you sign up for this call? What is your goal?
Okay. So I'm hearing sure. So I'm hearing a lot of lines at one time, so it's a little bit hard for me with the audio.
Okay.
And now I'm frozen. But the two goals that you mentioned are me, lifestyle and being a busy business person. Those describe me well. And what I want to do for the new year is get back into my habit of waking early. So probably my biggest challenge right now is actually motivation. I know the benefits of rising early. I've been good at it in the past, but maybe not for the past 3 or 4 months.
Okay. So do you want to do like a quick coaching session here and see if we can help you with this? Are you up for it?
Sure.
There is a bit of a delay, so we have to, work through the technical difficulties.
Yeah, I'm having audio problems,
Todd,
but a little bit.
Todd,
But
it
yeah,
just occurred to me what the audio is. Are you hearing the audio from the Google Hangout and the YouTube Live at the same time? Because if that's
probably.
yeah, so just go into
Probably.
the YouTube Live and mute it.
Okay. Okay. And I can't hear anybody now.
Well, now you should be able to hear just us in the Google Hangout. Does that make
Yeah.
it better?
I muted YouTube Live, but then I couldn't hear anything.
Well, we'll do the quick tech support. You're in the you're in a Google Hangout with us as well as the YouTube Live. That's how it works. And so when you mute the YouTube Live, you're not able to then hear us from the Google Hangout.
Yeah, when I mute YouTube Live, I can't hear anything.
Oh. Well, let's, even though it might be a little bit painful, let's see what we can do. Just pushing forward just a tiny bit. George, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So when we first started the coaching, I always start with the first two steps, which is the what, which is your goal. What do you want to do? And we want to know the specifics here because waking up early means so many different things to different people. So we want to know at what time do you want to wake up? Do you want to wake up every day or just work days? How many exceptions do you usually make? We want to know the specifics. And then the second part is the why, which is why you're doing it in the first place. Why, what is your motivation behind this goal?
Mm-hmm.
It's always a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with the why. Let's start with the what, sorry. What is your goal specifically?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think I can answer those. So I would. Mm-hmm. The what? Yeah, I'd like to get up at 5 o'clock and 6 out of 7 days a week. Okay.
Can you get 8 hours of sleep consistently with that time?
Yeah, that's a challenge. I try to go to bed in time to get 8 hours. I probably average closer to 7 when I do that.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel okay with 7? Do you feel that's enough for you?
Feel pretty good with 7, yeah.
Okay. So let's go into the why, because oftentimes the why changes the goal a little bit when you get more clear about why you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah, so it allows me, if I get up that early, to do kind of good self-care, and whether that's reading or thinking about my business or just kind of meditating, things that are good for me and are better when it's quiet. Mm-hmm. Have distractions.
Yeah, great, awesome. So you mentioned that a few months ago, 3 months ago, you were doing it. What was that part? Have you done it successfully so far in the past?
Yeah. So in November, so I was successful in the past, and in November, I ran a marathon, and after the marathon, I didn't have to get up to go running every morning. Older, of course, so that decreased my motivation to get up and exercise in the outdoors. But then, of course, the holidays, and then family time, etc. The days getting shorter, that had a bearing on it. Sunrise is much later. So all of those things have kind of factored into me not being back on my schedule.
Okay. And how did you feel back then when you were successful? I just want to know, the feeling back then versus now.
Yeah, certainly more productive. Felt like I was taking better care of myself. Got a better start to the day most days. Yeah.
So this is really the goal for most people. What is underneath the real goal, which is 5 a.m. We really want the feeling that we get and the productivity that we get. That is the real goal. And the 5 a.m. is just the number, right? So we're trying to get to that. Now, how are you feeling back then in November? So this is great that you've already done it because you already know how it feels. You already know the path. So can you think of what we can do right now so we can create the same success that we did back then?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it helps that the holidays are over. It's kind of the beginning of a new year, and I don't have that keep me out later and maybe drinking alcohol, things like that interfere with sleep. certainly, restarting a new year in business, etc. So those are things that would get me motivated to kind of get back on track.
Okay, that's good. But there was something specific that you said that helped you to do it in November, right? Is the marathon?
Yeah, I mean, one specific thing was I got up to do my runs for preparing for a race.
Right, right. So that was your reason back then to do it early, right? And
It was a reason, yeah. Helped a lot.
right. And was it something that you had to be there for, right? You had to get up and be there and show up every day. It was some kind of an accountability.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there some kind of accountability, something that would, when you wake up in the morning, would force you to be there? And if you didn't wake up, it would feel painful. That is what accountability is. Is there something that we can set?
I'm not sure. I'm not training for a race or anything like that. I do have some new challenges in my business, so that could be something that motivates and would give me extra time during the day to get those tasks done. Those are the things that come to mind initially.
Okay, let me just give you an example of what I mean about it.
Thank you.
Accountability usually is something that forces you to be up or to do your goal or what you said you were going to do because it feels more painful than not doing it. So in the morning, usually it's very painful to wake up when you're groggy and you get out of bed and not feeling well. So it has to be more painful than that to motivate you to do it. Usually what that is I'm just going to do the example of about exercise, but it can be about anything else. It's getting an accountability buddy and waking up every morning to go out running with them. And you set up the accountability that way that he's outside your door at 5:15 waiting for you, and having him there waiting and standing him up feels way worse than dealing with the grogginess. This is a great example of accountability, right? You're going to do, because we usually do what is less painful to us, the path of least resistance. So the accountability is usually setting something up that feels more painful. So is there something like that in your business that we can do? Like, for example, set a meeting with your colleagues, employees, something like that?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I'm not sure. I mean, part of that is that I enjoy the alone time, so I don't necessarily want to include someone else in the early morning. I kind of covet those hours for quiet time for me.
Okay. It doesn't have to be for the whole morning, by the way. It could be just like a 10-minute stand-up meeting session with the team or somebody else. And the reason that I'm pushing for this idea that the accountability is usually much more powerful when there's another person involved. If it's just you, it's a lot harder. There are some tools online that you can use. For example, you can commit some money on Stick. It's a site that you can commit money for. You say you're going to do a goal, put down some money, and if you don't do the goal, you lose the money. That is also motivating for some people. Usually, the big motivation is a feeling, and the feeling comes in a form of feeling, feeling afraid that people are going to think less of you because you said something and you're not doing it. A feeling of shame that you're not going to do something. That is usually more painful, right? And obviously, I'm putting you on the spot here to come up with something, but this can be a great exercise to do after the call. Just go through a list of few things that you can do, because this, in my experience, has been the most powerful technique to get somebody to wake up early, the accountability. There are a lot of tips and tricks and stuff like that, but this is the most powerful thing.
George, could I just chime in with this massive amount of anxiety that I feel? And it reminds me, it's this, there's this difference between coaching and a book, which is coaching is about really achieving the goal. And it reminds me so often how many goals I have that are really just fantasies of, oh, wouldn't it be nice? It's like I have the triathlons training Bible, triathletes training Bible, right? And it's like, and it has like, these charts, like here's how you train if you're training 500 hours a year. Here's how you train if you're training 1,000. And I like read those charts. I don't have 1,000 hours a year to train, right? And then sometimes in the coaching, you get this point that it's like, oh, what we're talking about is actually doing it, right? And that's really, I think, a big difference between the coaching and a book. And when you started talking to Todd about an accountability buddy, I was like, oh, yes, once again, we're talking about actually making the change, and change can be really scary. So I felt as the third party watching it, I felt the anxiety. All right. So first of all, Todd dropped off, but we should give him a round of applause, first of all, for being so brave. I thought that was very interesting to watch watch you in action there. And it's like, just to kind of explain it for listeners, is like the vast majority of coaching is facilitation. That George started with questions, but the reason you get those questions from a subject matter expert is that some of those questions are going to end up being very pointed, based on experience. So Todd told his story, and I completely missed a detail that you honed right in on, which was the marathon. That was a part of the structure that allowed him. The training for the marathon was a part of the structure that allowed him to wake up early. So that just went right over my head. And you filed it away early and came back to it in a way that is, that's the behavior of an experienced coach who has seen the same patterns over and over again. I thought that was really interesting. I'm curious. I think because we're like short on time, I'm curious what the accountability, where the accountability tool would have ended up for Todd. I think it's clear in listening to him. I don't think he wanted a person there, but there's other options than a person, right? I just thought it fascinating. I have maybe I just have sort of one more question. I mean, these interviews, these office hours, are a chance for people that are thinking about getting a coach to meet a coach. So we're not like giving the sales pitch, but we're explaining what it is that it means to work with you. And so I think the last thing I want to make sure that we explain is, on the Coach.me platform, you have two packages. One is our standard behavioral habit coaching package, which is all through daily text messages. So almost like similar in content to what we just did, but there's not this face-to-face. And then the other one, a bigger package that I think includes a bit more. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the difference between those two packages, and why someone might choose one or the other.
Yeah, sure. So the first package, which is $65 a month, I believe, it's basically about the accountability. That is the main part of it. And this is another form of accountability. And it's for people that don't have the luxury of an accountability buddy waiting for them outside. And it's a coach that checks in with you every day and asks you, did you do what you said you were going to do?
Yeah.
And usually for a lot of people, that is very motivating, when there's somebody watching over their back. And checking if you're sticking to your commitment. And can you remind me the details? You said there was something like 300% more likelihood a person sticking with the goal when they have
Yeah,
a coach.
that's basically what our data says, is that when we compare people that are self-coaching, so that's we have our original data set is um, self-tracking. So those people are self-coached, and we compare those to the success rates of people who are coached. We see that the success rate is about 3 times higher. Which, by the way, to make those numbers work, you have to realize that the vast majority of people don't succeed at their goal. Like I'd always tell people, when you pick up a goal and take one step towards it, I think there's probably only a 10% chance that you're going to get there. And so across the board, we're looking at, raising into the 30 and 50% rates, which is, like probably you have had the experience of a client shows up and then doesn't talk to you, right? Like we treat that as a failure. This just 30% probably sounds really low, and now I'm just throwing numbers at you. But our big research into success rates came from a big diet research study where we sent 12,000 people through, and what we found is that people that took the first step lost weight 12% of the time, and people who took the 30th step lost weight 75% of the time. And so the guidance I always give is like, basically, if you do the work, it's going to succeed. And if you use a coach, you're 3 times more likely to do the work. But there's a million reasons you're going to end up not doing the work. It's too hard. You don't like it. A different goal comes up. Really a different goal coming up is the biggest one, right? That work gets really busy, and then you're just like, oh, I don't have time. So yeah, that's to answer your question, George. Yeah, it's about 3 times higher.
Awesome. So yeah, this is the main benefit that this package offers you: the accountability coaching, being there and checking up on you every day, and of course working through challenges every day. But this is only through chat. And the other package, which is $197 a month, involves video talking once a month. There's a coaching call like this, where we talk about a subject or a challenge that you're going through right now in depth. And we can go a lot more in depth through video versus chat, because I can see your face, I can hear your voice, and there's a lot more information going through, and I can help you more adequately. You also get the chat coaching with the bigger package, and the other feature of the package is get the course that I created, which is Become an Early Riser in 28 Days, which is specific steps. Each day you get a step about a little tip or a little challenge that you might have through the process.
Right.
So if you need more than just accountability, if you need to also know the techniques, you need to know some tips and tricks how to make this easier, this course can help you a lot. If you already know what to do and you just need some extra help and pushing, probably the basic package of accountability coaching is right for you.
Right. I mean, obviously, I'm of the opinion that people should buy as much coaching as they can afford. But that's exactly right. That the accountability coaching that we did was, basically pioneered here at Coach.me. That we were the first people to figure out how to consistently deliver daily coaching over text messaging. And the challenge from the coach's perspective is they don't get the face-to-face. But then the benefit is that it's much more scalable. It's very easy to just pick a coach and get going. But the face-to-face is where there is so much power of helping, just getting in, as you say, the skills, but also understanding where there's these mental roadblocks that are kind of preventing you from from succeeding. I think that's great. So George, after this, I'm going to send everyone links to hire you. I mean, certainly if you were here and you listened to this whole thing, I think you're a prime candidate for a coach, for the expertise, for the advice, for the accountability. And because if you listen to this whole video, then clearly you care about becoming an early riser. George, just huge thanks to you. And I think,
Thank you.
yeah, we're good. All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.